Pokemon ZA is, as we know, about to shake up the entire battle style with this upcoming release. And from turn-based to open world, fluid battle styles is exactly what we need. Just something fresh, something to bring us back into the game, to help us really lock back into what it is, like the team building, the Pokemon itself that we're trying to actually turn into a great Pokemon. And I feel like a lot of this has now made it to the point where we have the ability to build a more potent fighter, but it's just so much that we just don't know yet about it, and so much to speculate. And you tell me in the comments below, let me know how you feel about some of these. But before we get into the video, make sure you like, share, subscribe, man. Road to 100 subscribers, we're on our way, man, and I appreciate everybody coming in, showing love, showing support, no matter how small it is. I do this because I love it, man, and I hope to interact with other people who are like-minded in it. So without further ado, let's jump into the video. So the first stat I want to go ahead and look at is speed. It's no longer just turn order. In the mainline games, it used to decide who moves first, but now it really doesn't cut it as much. I feel like it's now it's going to be based upon things like the cooldowns, because as we see in some of the gameplay footage from the trailers, there aren't any PP shown, and we do see that they kind of are on cooldowns, essentially. So speed can now be tied into, maybe these three stats here. We have the attack cooldowns, so maybe the faster the Pokemon is, the less delay between the attacks, which is great for if you have a Pokemon that's fast enough to pull off something like a Fire Blast that may normally take a long time to charge back up, with it being so low and in the PP pool. So maybe having like a faster Flareon gives you the chance to spam that Fire Blast a little bit quicker than something like, I don't know, a bigger, slower fire Pokemon. I don't know why nothing's coming to the top of my head right now. Even the movement speed, and dodge distance. I'm pretty sure we're gonna have a dodge button or some type of accelerated movement button on here that will help us get, avoid some of these attacks. So the speed definitely is going to help out with something like those. And the combo potential itself, if we have the ability to chain together attacks, I can definitely see the speed stat allowing us to do that more fluidly, and gives us more options within like the attacks. Maybe certain attacks can only be chained with certain attacks due to the speed stat. Maybe there's like a certain floor or ceiling you have to get to utilize certain moves or certain move sets. So this could definitely be something interesting. With it being such a powerful stat in general, they might keep the same aspect about it moving into this game. It may be tied to some powerful attacks and powerful movements in the game. So hopefully that's something that we actually get to see implemented within the release. Moving on to the attack stats, I really hope this is something that actually happens within the game, because it just adds to the overall flavor of the game. The attack and special attack, as they still fuel the damage, it would be great to see something like how hard they stagger the opponents, or the ability to break their guard. So something that we see in a lot of open world fighting games or games like this are things like stagger, armor break. So giving us the ability to actually break the guard of a Pokemon, or stagger a Pokemon based off of how strong we are, is something that will definitely add to just the overall strategy of it. Maybe they give us something like adaptive damage scaling, which is great because now we have that ability to pull off perfect attacks. Maybe the closer we are to the opponent as a melee attacker, we deal more damage as opposed to being further away. That could be something cool added into the game, being able to pull off a close combat that actually does more damage the closer you are to the opponent, as opposed to something like Ice Beam. The further you're away, it's still probably going to do some decent damage, but the effectiveness of it, maybe it doesn't have the full effect of freezing a target with how far you are, as opposed to being, like point blank range. So just cool little mechanics I could see added into the attack stat to just give it some new life and everything. And on the other side of that, we have the defense. Definitely, if they're gonna rework the attack stats and the abilities and everything, giving the defense a bit of a buff is would be greatly appreciated, especially, like I said, this is an open world fighting game essentially for the Pokemon. So maybe it just doesn't reduce the damage taken anymore, and it gives you a bit more protection. So if they introduce the staggering effect for the attack, then obviously, doing things like helping to buff your defense prevents you from being staggered. And this would be great for moves like Focus Punch, just giving those 2-turn attacks that would throw you off if you're hit during the move. So maybe now you pull off something like a Iron Defense before pulling off like a Focus Punch, and now all of a sudden you're able to still pull off that Focus Punch if you just happen to get attacked by your opponent. So just a little bit of added strategy, and gives like the defensive side of it just a bit more life. And things like the armor frames, super armor could definitely be a thing added to the game now that you have something like a Steelix or something trying to power through an attack, use one of his signature attacks, and instead of him being knocked back from a stagger or something like that, he has enough iframes or super armor frames to make it through the attack. So definitely can make these Pokemon a bit more dangerous to deal with, especially if they're like in the wild or something like that. But also to just heighten up the trainer battles now. Sometimes it feels like us going through the CPU battles is a bit easy, but having these types of mechanics in there definitely makes it a bit more challenging and gives those tanks some more room to shine within the game. And moving on to the health stat, really and truly, I don't see much being done to it. It's pretty much, cut and dry. This is your health pool. Of course, there could probably be certain things added in to give it a bit more of strategy as well too, such as things like regeneration windows, or basically giving yourself dodge streaks, or little safe zones that trigger things like micro healing. Maybe grass type Pokemon on grassy terrain or something like that, they get an added buff to their healing due to not taking attack. Maybe the sunlight plays a bigger role in the game for grass type Pokemon. Maybe there's other things that help with the passive healing for a certain type of Pokemon in the game, as opposed to things like the hydration ability in the rain. Or maybe things like Swarm, Blaze, Torrent. Maybe those get more visualization when those are activating within the second wind. Maybe it actually shows the power boost for the Pokemon due to the health drop. Just like I said, there's not really a lot that I see being done to overhaul the health system in it, but there are some quality of life things that could be done to it just to spark it up a bit. And so the thing that I am probably like the most excited about when it comes to like the new stats or the implementations that they can do are things like the stamina, focus meter, or like cooldown reduction. These are definitely some cool things that could be added into the game to make it less monotonous. With the stamina or energy bar, it'll obviously limit how often we can dodge, sprint, or spam the moves that we want to use. Maybe that's tied to more of the speed system. Maybe that's why you counteract that with a faster Pokemon. Maybe it is more of a glass cannon, but the stamina and energy bar doesn't necessarily hinder you when it comes to that build. The focus and timing windows, maybe like skills like counter and reversal, they may scale, or they may only be effective when used at the proper time. Now in the turn-based, obviously you use the move, you wait for your opponent to use another move, hopefully they use an attack that coincides with it, but now you actually get to see, oh, he's pulling off a physical attack, I can counter that. I can utilize that as a parry. Reversal, I know he's about to hit me with a lot of damage that I probably won't be able to dodge. So boom, this reversal might be able to flip the tide. So that would definitely be a fun little stat or something to add into the game that would give us a better, a more natural and familiar feel when it comes to these types of fighting games. And then of course the cooldown reduction percentage, something that may scale due to things like held items, or like I said, the speed stat. It's probably going to dictate a lot when it comes to this game. So definitely seeing like a cooldown reduction being applied to a Pokemon due to the items that they're holding, or maybe it's due to a new ability that they add into the game that maybe Stab takes it into an account. Maybe your fire type attacks for a fire type Pokemon may decrease quicker than an ice type move like Ice Fang on a Arcanine. So Little things like that could probably help determine what the new metas are, you know, how to actually build your Pokemon moving forward, and probably helps us utilize more of the new stat-based system as opposed to the plain old copy and paste that we've probably been seeing and using since generation 1. And now it's time to switch over to the other side of this video, which are the abilities. These could go from being just passive traits to actual real-time triggers, and if so, these could be some fun ones to use. Of course, some of the ones that I've thought about and I've written down, maybe not necessarily brand new or groundbreaking, but like I said, it gives a bit more of a nuance to it. Things like speed boost, rough skin, sturdy, and Moxie. Rough skin obviously is going to reflect some chip damage on close contact attacks. Like I said, this might coincide with things like the adaptive damage scaling. Maybe the closer the Pokemon is when they're using the attack, rough skin does more damage. The further they are trying to use a physical attack, the less damage. Things like sturdy, that could probably be tied into the counter system. Maybe instead of you're at full health, instead of getting hit with a one hit KO move, you have the ability to counter it or dodge it with the sturdy ability that allows you to maybe not necessarily go down to 1 HP, but take a percentage of that damage. This could be a very cool way to utilize something that's only like a one-time sort of use thing and makes it more conscious within the battle. So that could be a fun one that they can definitely rework. And flame body, this is a fun one that could chain into like so many combos. Oh, moves like this, like the contact moves. Oh my goodness, I can see flame body not only, I mean, obviously doing the same thing, applying a burn debuff if you know you're hit by a physical attack, but the way that, like I said, the damage scaling happens, that now puts you, you know, now this is a flying Pokemon that could, you know, control the space within the fight. Oh my goodness, like a Talonflame with the flame body. Oh man, this might go crazy. So just looking at the different types of ways these could be utilized within the fight is what actually has me intrigued. So moving on to like the momentum based abilities, things like speed boost. Like I said, I can see this not only like in the normal games, they are, you know, turn-based. Every turn, you know, the speed just raises. But since there are no essential turns, this could be something that happens like over time, or the more clean hits without being hit might trigger the speed boost ability, you know. So that could be a fun one to see for what are they? What Pokemon are they? Like Shed Ninja, Ninjask, Pokemon like that. Being already fast Pokemon, being able, or nimble Pokemon. Imagine being super evasive and then adding in that speed boost that allows you just to zip around the field. That could definitely be a problem on the right Pokemon. The Moxie ability, maybe instead of a KO only, now it activates on staggering opponents. So that ties into adding in the stagger mechanic into the game for the attack stat. You know, you put a Pokemon with a strong attack stat with the Moxie ability, every time he staggers, boom, attack raises again. So now damn near everything he hits is a stagger. So that could be definitely a fun one, and like something that actually sounds OP the more I think about it. And beast boost, you know, maybe if they add combos into the game, this could be something that actually, like, oh man, Pokemon, maybe they say moves like beat up or close combat, or maybe those are like the combo moves, or maybe it's a chain of attacks that, you know, make it a combo, who knows. But this could be something that raises a stat mid-fight to basically help say, hey, yo, we have these types of attacks, they have their usefulness, this ability now gives them, you know, more viability within a fight. And last but not least is the tactical abilities. These are some of the moves that I see could be fun within this new type of like battle style or battle mechanic. Like the levitate, obviously being able to dodge ground type attacks, but maybe this gives the Pokemon the ability to like actually fly in a sense, or hover at least enough to dodge these attacks. To me, this would be more of a quality of life thing, just to show the ability in its like true form, like truest form. Not necessarily saying this would be something, once again, groundbreaking or game changing, but the move pressure, there's no PP. So if they keep this move into the game for like Pokemon who like this is like their staple ability, this maybe slows the stamina regen, or even better, this slows the cooldown times of these attacks. So now instead of you being able to fire off these quick attacks so fast, instead of losing the PP for it, it just takes longer to pull off this quick attack. This actually like shows like I don't know, to me this fits perfectly for this game. If we're being honest, pressure might be one of the few that like might go perfectly with a cooldown based system. And then tinted lens, obviously this will just help with like the more creative play, being able to utilize attacks that, while they are on a higher cooldown due to, like I said, a water type Pokemon having an electric type attack, you know, this will allow that attack to actually do a bit more damage on, you know, that ground type attack Pokemon, or just help that attack be more viable. You know, that's the biggest thing here. Like, how can they make more of these moves and abilities and Pokemon, you know, more viable within the game? Because I feel like every year there's more Pokemon that they add in that just kind of get swept to the wayside. New Pokemon get added in, and we don't really get to explore, you know, them because they don't give them a proper kit. I feel like they could definitely change that with what they're doing with ZA, with the overall mechanics. And like I said, if any of this is actually in the game, this would definitely make for a much richer battle system. Obviously a newer one for us, and something for us to go in and essentially learn again. And I'm here for it. Anything that allows me to feel like Pokemon is going in a direction that is a bit more challenging, or like I'm down for it. But this was my video. I know this kind of ran out longer than I thought it was going to be, but this is definitely a fun one to make. If you have any, you know, thoughts about it, if you feel like any of these might be in the game, if you feel like there's ones that could go along with the system that I've been explaining, then drop them down in the comments, man. I appreciate everybody showing up. Hey, if you feel like I'm talking out the side of my butt, hey, drop it down in a comment. Like I said, I'm appreciated for everybody who comes in and shows some love, man. And until the next one, we out.